That's right.
Oh, yay. That's right. We're at the mystery experience. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me see here. Let me get it up in the room. Oh, I'm already screen sharing already. Boo, boo, boo. Here we come.
Oh,
Here we
yay.
come.
That's right. We're at the mystery experience. I love it.
There, I hear me
I love it.
again.
So let me
Mute that
let me get it up.
and go back over here to the Kindle where we want to be looking. There. Do you have the book in the room now?
Yep.
All right. Very
Well,
good.
in my room.
Hey.
I don't count that, right?
That does not count. It's in your world.
Yeah, the illusion of separate experience.
I know it. It's great. Okay. So you want to read since been yakking for a while?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I have us on the top of page 52. We had just started to read this, and I think we
back up here.
Actually, you know what? I had it on the bottom of page 53, but why don't we start at the because it's just a couple of pages to, and we've been reading this fairly quickly, unlike our previous book, which we were going through very slowly, meticulously. I think this, being a biography, lends to reading a little bit more each time. So why don't I just reread what we read last week, those first 2 pages, and then we can proceed from there. Does that sound good?
That's good.
Okay, this is because that'll give the context of the subway experience.
Okay, good.
So Ken begins. Helen's account of this experience, her mystical experience she had on the subway in New York City, which begins the second part of the biography, the autobiography. The first part being her graduate school paper I discussed above, was characteristically somewhat embroidered in the setting Helen gave it, though not in the experience itself. Rather than edit down Helen's written account without her assistance, I've decided to reproduce it as Helen wrote it and rewrote it. My recollection of Helen's recounting this experience to me, incidentally, as well as what is stated in one of the versions of the narrative, was that it occurred many years prior to her entering graduate school, parentheses, after I had been married some 5 years or so, close friends. Yet it appears in all other versions of her autobiography while she was attending school. If my memory is indeed correct, as my understanding of this discrepancy, the shift in date came from Helen's feeling that it was effective from a literary point of view, a frequent concern of hers, to place the experience while she was attending school rather than earlier. This temporal change would provide a sharp contrast between the striking religious nature of the experience and the, quote, angry atheism, unquote, she adopted during the period she was at New York University. Here then is Helen's description. And this is the first few paragraphs we read last week also. But
just before you go on, I just wanted to say something real quick
about sure.
The temporal change business here, how she puts things in a different sequence in her life, in her autobiography, I think is really it shows that she has an open thought to the fact that time is not a fixed thing, and that you can rearrange things.
Yeah, and we all do. I mean, we have false memories. We, of course, one could say that our entire experience of space, time, and the material universe is a false memory from the Course's perspective, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's all made up here, right? So not to worry.
It's all a hoax.
It's all a facade and a fraud, but it's an innocent one in truth. Okay, here's Helen's description. As it turned out, the subject of God was not a closed issue after all. It came up again in a most unexpected way. The first of a long and startling series of episodes took place at a particularly unlikely time. I had shifted from agnosticism to angry atheism, having reached a point where the mere mention of religion or God irritated me. I was heavily armed with, quote, scientific, unquote, weapons, prepared and even eager to do battle with ideas even remotely religiously toned. If anyone was intent on pursuing the subject, I was apt to become rather insulting. And if I happened to come upon a religious discussion on the radio, TV, I would snap off the set sharply. afterwards directing a few choice comments in its direction. I was also angry at people. The chip on my shoulder kept falling off, and I spent a good deal and I spent a good deal of time and energy looking around for things to get angry at. Doesn't that describe about 8 billion people in various ways? If not anger, some other, equally immobilizing, debilitating emotion or thought. Naturally, they were not hard to find. People seem to have developed an exploitative tendency and a lack of consideration, the extent of which I had not previously suspected. I felt increasingly deprived, unappreciated, and resentful, but did not suspect that I was actually quite depressed and anxious. I firmly, there's there's a little light at the end of the tunnel glimmering through. It's like, well, it was my depression and anxiety, not the world doing it to me. I firmly, though rather simple-mindedly, believed I had overcome religious superstition and at last, and arriving at the one remaining area of truth, a rigid and particularly dogmatic experimentalism, was finally looking at things realistically. To borrow a phrase from my own much later notes, and then in brackets, Ken has put, actually the phrase originated from Helen's lips as she awoke one morning and was related to Bill. See below page 166. And then another quote, never underestimate the power of denial. It can indeed obscure the very obvious. Well, the power of denial that, quick aside, that we're studying in a course on miracles is, of course, the denial of truth, which indirectly made up, again, the aforementioned entire material universe. That's a pretty powerful denial, I would say. Yeah. Any comments so far, Lynn?
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's the power of Helen's mind just amazes me still.
Yeah. And again, she's in truth, no different from anyone else. I mean, she may have had a facility for tuning into Holy Spirit and letting that flow through her in an extremely clear, lucid manner, and which gave us the course and the two supplements and her poetry and so forth. And yet, she was ambivalent like all of us. So she, again, as we've been saying right along through reading this book, her story is everyone's story, because we all have that ambivalence, that wishy-washiness.
Yeah, and it's not sinful, it's not bad, it's just hesitation to go into the unknown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's also, another word is ambiguity, which came up in a session for School for A Course in Miracles yesterday, and I just flashed on the word ambiguity, and it's it's sort of like the ego's mantra: I am big, you itty. It's sort of our myopic view of the world, right?
I am big, you itty. I love it.
You itty bitty.
So itty bitty.
Okay, so let's pick up where we left off here. Here's Helen's commentary again on her experience. One cold winter evening, my husband and I went to visit some friends who live some distance away. I hated public transportation and avoided it whenever possible. I had been a secret cab taker for years before I was married, but had generally left the cab a block or so from our building because my father strongly disapproved of cabs except in emergencies. Now, I no longer saw any need to apologize for my indulgence. In fact, I felt it was something to which I was actually entitled. I wanted to take a cab that evening, particularly as it was starting to snow. Louis did not share my viewpoint and reminded me, to my great annoyance, that the trip was long and the subway only a block away. I regarded this as an unpardonable insult. But without expressing further objections, I marched angrily to the subway, grimly determined to suffer, but not alone. As we reached the platform, the train was just pulling out, and I had to wait some 20 minutes for the next one. I grew angrier and angrier as the time passed. When the next train finally came, it was packed, and we had to stand quite a while before we got a seat over a very hot radiator. I was wearing a new fur coat, which I was sure would be ruined, At each station, a freezing gale blew in against my hatless head as the doors opened. It also worked havoc with my hairdo, on which I had spent considerable time before leaving home. I grew increasingly convinced I would come down with pneumonia, a constant fear of Helen's, Ken puts in brackets, probably in both lungs. As an additional hazard, people were coughing and sneezing all around me, and I could almost see the germs attacking. I was certain by the time that my husband's thoughtlessness would have a fateful outcome. I was certain by that time that my husband's thoughtlessness would have a fatal outcome. His contented absorption in his newspaper did not help matters either. But for some reason, I forgot that Louis was on the subway with her, but it's sort of not too pertinent to the rest of the story. Do you want to pick up where we left off? Here. Did Lynn?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just. Oh my gosh. Let's see.
I've got besides being dangerous at the
What page are you on?
it's page 53.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I just lost my whole
You might have gone ahead a bit of advice.
yeah, because I pressed the when you're on Zoom, you can do the space bar and it will take you to it'll unmute the mic.
Oh, right.
But let's see. I'm just
So do you want to search for a phrase like at the bottom of page 53 where we left off was besides being dangerous? That's probably only one of those in the book, right?
okay.
Oh, no, there you've got it.
I'm right there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
past that one.
We'll pass that one. Okay.
The next
Besides,
paragraph. There you go.
oh,
That's it.
and it's so weird because I had a bookmark on here and I just took the bookmark off.
Oh.
Honestly, oh my goodness. What does that mean? I am not a body. I'm free. I'm still God created me. I choose the joy of God instead of pain. Okay. I'm not gonna be freaking out because I screwed up. Anyway, okay.
No harm was done.
No harm was done. Yeah. Okay.
That's the course reminds us.
So she's on the subway with her husband and he's reading his newspaper and she's thinking she's being attacked on all sides, coughing and sneezing and wind blowing and
every insult and injury that she could imagine.
And I can imagine she was probably wearing high heels and nylons and a dress and
I kind of picture that too. Yeah.
pearls and I mean, I just
That sort of image of Helen, right?
sitting on the subway being attacked by everything all around. So, okay, so she says, besides being dangerous, the whole situation was thoroughly revolting to me. The train smelled of garlic and peanuts. I just can't imagine, kind of like Texas Roadhouse. And the people crowded in with us looked dirty and shabby. Across the aisle, a child with hands streaked with chocolate had patted his mother's face and coat, leaving smudgy fingerprints all over her. 2 seats away, another mother was wiping off her dress where her baby had thrown up. A group of older children were making a lot of noise, and one of them picked up a wad of chewing gum from the floor and put it in his mouth. At the far end, this is just horrifying. At the far end of the train, some old men were arguing heatedly and perspiring freely. I was finding the whole situation increasingly disgusting and closed my eyes to shut it out, feeling sick to my stomach.
It almost sounds more like a comedy than.
No, it's like, I mean, if I'm in the New York City subway, oh my gosh. But yeah, that was her experience. So this is very cool.
But wait.
But wait. She closed her eyes. She chose the joy of God instead of the pain. And then a stunning thing happened. It was very brief. The intense emotions associated with it began to fade almost at once and disappeared entirely in something like less than a minute. An accurate account of what happened is impossible. As an approximation, however, I can say that it was through a blinding light, as though a blinding light blazed up behind my closed eyes and filled my mind entirely. Without opening my eyes, I seemed to be watching a figure of myself as a child walking directly into the light. The child seemed to know exactly what she was doing. It was as if the situation were completely familiar to her. For a moment she paused and knelt down, touching the shining ground with elbows, wrist, and forehead in what looked like an Eastern gesture of deep reverence. Then she got up, walked to the right side, and knelt again, this time resting her head as if leaning against a gigantic tree. The feeling of a great arm, and brackets, Ken says, one of God's everlasting arms, into brackets, reached around her. A feeling of a great arm reached around her, and she disappeared. The light grew even brighter, and I felt the most indescribably intense love streaming from the light to me. It was so powerful that I literally gasped and opened my eyes. I saw the light an instant longer, during which I loved everyone on the train with that same incredible intensity. Everyone there was unbelievably beautiful and incredibly dear. Then the light faded and the old picture of dirt and ugliness returned. The contrast was truly shocking. It took me several minutes to regain a semblance of composure. Then I reached uncertainly for Lewis's hand. I don't know how to explain this, I said in a shaky voice, but a very funny thing just happened. Actually, it scared me a little, and it's very hard to describe, but, well, I hesitated a moment and then went on breathlessly. I saw a great light, and waves of love came out of it. And when I opened my eyes, I loved everybody here, just like it loved me. It's all gone now, and I don't understand what happened. That's the end of Helen's quote. Louis, an omnivorous reader, had read a little on mysticism, although he found the subject was of limited interest. Strangely enough, he did not seem surprised and patted my hand reassuringly. Don't worry, he said soothingly, picking up his newspaper again. It's a common mystical experience. Don't give it another thought.
It's almost like Louis the straight man, and she's the comic, the stand-up comic,
Oh my God,
the stand-up mystic in this case.
pat her hand, don't worry. This happens all the time, honey.
It's just de rigueur.
I read
It's
about
par
it.
for the course. Yeah.
Oh my God. The experience is so startlingly different from Helen's conscious life that she tried hard to do what Louis recommended. She says, I tried to follow his advice and partially succeeded. The episode did not fit into my conscious life, which remained unaffected by it for a long time. However, it hung suspended in a corner of my mind, although I did not give it any serious thought for years. So let's just stop and talk about that.
Yeah, that's quite an account, isn't it?
It is.
And yeah, I think we probably all have, maybe glimpses similar to that, even if it's just momentary. And it sounds like hers was really sort of momentary too, but just long enough for it to really register that there is another way of looking at the world that's completely different, where there's no scapegoats, there's no victims and victimizers, there's just a perfection that is hidden in forms that are masquerading as reality that we take as we take those interpretations the ego gives us that are squeezed down, distorted, disguised, and otherwise obfuscated so that we don't see the light. It's just this dark film noir account of a dream, and that we take as reality. And when the veils metaphorically are lifted, it's like, wow, everyone's our long lost savior, a long lost best friend and sibling. And the joyous reunion of that experience, not a kinship in a biological sense, but that the true, I guess you could say, like the agape, the three types of love that was that the Greeks, I think it was the Greeks that talked about, the agape being the mystical version of the unconditional acceptance, the unqualified acceptance. Right?
Yeah, it's and it's so beautiful. I mean, if you look at the situation, the whole, like the vision, first she saw herself as a little girl, saw
Mhm.
her little innocent self walking in this bright light, and then coming up to a place where she's being held in the arms of God, and that just everything surrounding the bright light, which we do read a lot about that kind of thing in A Course in Miracles. And that reminded me of Joe Wolf. I don't know if you ever knew Joe Wolf, but
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
yeah, he had a story similar to that when he was a very small child, and he had a sickness, and they thought he was going to die. And the hand of God, a giant hand, just reached into the crib where he was and held him. And so, I mean, that's kind of cool. But I was, I mean, that's not just kind of cool. That's amazing. But um, it, I had a not this depth of experience, but a similar type of experience in the Denver airport one day.
Mm.
And I was sitting I had a lot of interesting experiences in the Denver airport, but but I was sitting waiting for my flight, and went to McDonald's to get breakfast. So I was sitting in the little area, common area where people eat, and there was a family there. They had several children, and there was the little boy. He looked like he must have been about 4. He was small. A little boy was carrying one of those drink trays with like at least three drinks on it, walking very carefully, carrying this drink tray from McDonald's over to the table where his family was. And when I watched him, and as I saw him, I just saw how hard he was trying, what he was doing. It was just like he was doing the best he could, and trying so hard to be good. And then all of a sudden I realized everybody around me was doing the same thing. Everyone in the whole airport just suddenly was like, in my mind, just glowing with this beautiful joy of life, and everyone doing the best they could. And I looked at this family where the guy was going into the army to be deployed. You could tell, or whatever, and you could see this family with, grandma and grandpa and everybody. And it was just like I was just in the midst of Love Central, and felt just so much love for everyone there. It was an amazing experience. And of course it didn't last forever. And I was still, bitching about my flight being late later. So
Uh, the tide rushes in pretty fast to wash away our sandcastles of mysticism.
but still, I mean, that's the kind of thing that can happen. And I love, she says, this feeling stayed with her, even though it wasn't like it didn't completely change her, and she didn't become enlightened and suddenly live
Yeah,
off
yeah.
the planet or something. She went right back to her same thought system, but she had that in her corner all the time.
Exactly. You can't unsee something once you've seen it. I think that's an important principle of our progress with the course's metaphysics is, once you have a glimpse that there's a better way, that becomes a motivating factor that can't be erased. In fact, not only can it be erased, but that's the only thing that really is true. What's behind that anyway, which is our eternal shared nature that is really drawing us inexorably, happily. It's a happy inevitability that we will all return to that source in an indescribable joy, right? That we we just get little glimpses of, like Helen did. Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say, as a quick disclaimer, the mention of 2 fast food chains is not necessarily an endorsement by Bruce Rawles or Ellen Johnson, McDonald's and Subway in particular, and just so we get that, for the
That's
legal
right.
department, right? So yeah.
Yeah. I'll eat junk food anywhere, so
And Subway was the title of the section, so
yes,
we had no choice to reference that. Yeah.
Subway experience. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. You want to read on then?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So Ken says, incidentally, readers familiar with A Course in Miracles will recognize an allusion to this experience in the beautiful passage in the section from the text called The Forgotten Song. And you know what? When I read this the first time, I had not really read the course. I had bits and pieces of it, so I really didn't know this. So now this time when I was reading it, it appeared to me, that whole thing. And I
Yeah, yeah.
there's uh in that Course in Miracles movie that they made a long time ago, I think it's is it Judy Skutch that
Yeah.
reads this, and it's so beautiful. It just blows me away to hear it every time tears come in my eyes. So okay, so we're going to read from The Forgotten Song. Beyond the body, beyond the sun and stars, past everything you see and yet somehow familiar, is an arc of golden light that stretches as you look into a great and shining circle. And all the circle fills with light before your eyes. The edges of the circle disappear, and what is in it is no longer contained at all. The light expands and covers everything, extending to infinity, forever shining, and with no break or limit anywhere. Within it, everything is joined in perfect continuity, nor is it possible to imagine that anything could be outside, for there is nowhere that this light is not. This is the vision of the Son of God, whom you know well. Here is the sight of him who knows his Father. Here is the memory of what you are, a part of this, with all of it within, and joined to all, as surely as all is joined in you. That's from text chapter 21.
Yep, one of my favorite sections. Definitely a beautifully inspiring section that is prefaced with a reminder that that on our own we're blind. The in chapter 21 it talks about our cues for inference are wrong. We're stumbling around blindfolded in a dark cave and that has all these precipitous drop offs and all these seeming hazards that we call the vicissitudes of life in this world, and yet it's all part of an incredible dream that we've imposed upon ourselves. And that inner kindness teacher that the Course calls Holy Spirit or Jesus is waiting patiently 24/7 for us to follow that guidance and like the lamp that leads us out of the abyss and out of the labyrinth and the cavernous depths of the ego mind and out into the metaphoric light of shared interests and forgiveness and the kindness that results from that practice. Right?
Yeah. And you just made me think you're talking all this, like stepping out of a cavern after you've been traveling through caves into the bright light of the day is probably a very similar experience.
Yeah.
What the guy who left Plato's cave, what was that
Yeah.
guy's name anyway?
I'm not sure if he had a name, but
Anonymous.
yeah. And of course, they hadn't invented sunglasses then, just to our knowledge. So
No,
probably.
although they had a long time ago, I know the Native Americans or Native Alaskans had a form of sunglasses that were pinhole glasses.
Okay.
Because the sun is so brutal up there.
Yeah.
Against
Oh,
the sun.
that's interesting.
Yeah. You should check them out. If you're nearsighted, do you wear glasses? Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I did get cataract surgery a couple of summers ago.
Oh yeah,
So-
that's right. Have that cataract thing.
So I don't really, in fact, I was wearing them just this morning, just for a little change of pace, but I hardly wear them much anymore.
Yeah, well that's the pinhole glasses, if you've ever seen them.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and you can actually buy them, and
Yeah.
you have, like, if you are nearsighted or whatever, pinhole glasses will you'll be able to see with them even if you wear a strong prescription.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the little pinholes actually stop the interference of the light. So
Right.
you're seeing, it's just really an interesting thing. I
It's
don't
like
know.
an F300 stop on a camera,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But
You're
it, I,
just stopping the iris or the diaphragm down to where everything has to be in focus because it's only going through a very tiny little
so
pinhole. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Hence the craze around pinhole photography. That too. It's kind of fun.
That's right. Or if you happen to be where there is going to be an eclipse, you can
Yeah. Yeah.
pull in a
Yeah.
paper and it will shine on the ground and you'll see the eclipse.
The funny thing is the eclipse passed right over where we were living, the total eclipse. But I was in California at the time with my mom. My wife got to see it. She went outside and said, "Wow, it's pretty neat." But it was a partial eclipse in California. But what a neighbor had done is brought out a vegetable strainer, a colander, and it had a whole bunch of little pinholes. So when it was partially as full as it was going to get there, which was like a crescent cut out of a sun, or a crescent remaining where the moon was obscuring part of the sun, I could see holding up this colander, uh, casting down on the sidewalk, hundreds of little crescents. It was kind of cool.
That's very cool. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Or I've seen where like a tree that had like leaves with the little holes in them from where
Hmm.
had eaten through them, and you could see all the little
Yep.
eclipses. I mean, there's a reason for all these allegories.
Hmm.
It's very cool. So let's see. I just
Should I pick up where you left off?
there we go. Yes.
Okay, I have us on the bottom of page 55. So we're moving right along compared to when we read The Journey Home, huh? Reading several pages a day.
Yeah, and also I just switched my microphone.
Oh, that's much better.
Okay.
Yeah, for me
Yeah,
anyway. Hopefully for the live audience as well as the recording.
yeah. I just okay, I accidentally had turned it off. So there we
Oh,
go. All right.
okay,
So
super.
go ahead, read
Okay,
on.
so Ken continues with his commentary. This passage always made Helen uncomfortable for reasons that for a long time I could never understand, as its beautiful language was such that Helen ordinarily would have loved it. I then one day remembered the passage's connection with the subway experience, in quotes, and recognized that the discomfort related to this experience, not to the passage itself. During this period, preceding her entering graduate school, Helen had a series of dreams which bear on her split self. We have already examined one of these, quote, the blue-gray bird, unquote, but the others are interesting as well, for they reflect directly the underlying conflict in Helen that is one of the central themes of this book. We turn to them now. So, and then this major subheading is dreams, and then there's several smaller subheads of the different dreams here. There's the gentleman, the hen in the pot. Let's see, the puppy. Probably won't get to all these today. The rabbit. The greatest experience of my life. Dream 1, Dream 2, and that takes us well into the 70s. The witch angel. I'm just kind of skimming ahead, a little preview. The recorder. And I guess that's it for chapter 3. And then when we finish those, we'll be on page 83 in the print version. And then that's about leading to A Course in Miracles B. So that was her time at the Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center doing work in psychology. But before I guess up to the time she met Bill. But meanwhile, we're going to review the dreams she had prior to that part of her life. Okay. So Ken continues. Dreams. As I mentioned in the discussion of the blue-gray bird, Helen wrote down the dreams in a stylized way as if they were short stories. While the form of the dreams, therefore, has changed, their content of reflecting Helen's inner conflict has remained the same. Moreover, they exhibit a remarkable consistency, even though they span many years. The dreams, incidentally, were not given titles by Helen, but I have supplied them for ease of reference. Okay, so there's the titles I just read were Ken provided, rather than Helen provided. Moreover, I have occasionally edited them down with ellipses signifying my omissions, unless otherwise noted. and have performed some very minor editing on mistakes I know Helen would have wished corrected. She obviously never planned on these dreams being published, which also accounts for the informal nature of the writing. Okay. Do you want to read the first one?
Sure. How am I
Okay.
sounding? Do I sound okay?
Yeah, sound good.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I turned everything off over here.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
what am I doing? All right. So this is the dream called The Gentleman. It reminds me of a Buffy episode. Okay. The first dream we consider is The Gentleman, where Helen is confronted by a gentleman, symbolic of Jesus, hence the capital G. He offers in the book, it's capitalized, the G in gentleman. Which is really interesting. Okay. He offers Helen the choice of joining his world, which, among other things, has an economy of great abundance and is not an economy of scarcity. Its inhabitants have no needs of any kind. The gentleman is totally non-confrontive and exerts no coercion on Helen at all. He merely states the reality of Helen's choice and allows her total freedom to accept or refuse his offer. Characteristically, Helen is uncommitted and still retains the right to choose her own personal world. Thank you for the invitation. This is in quotes, she says. Thank you for the invitation. I haven't quite made up my mind about coming, but if I do, I'll insist on bringing my own slack suits.
Before you start on that, there's a footnote I could read. That's funny, isn't it? Yeah, I'll bring my own wardrobe to my utopian dream, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, go ahead and read the footnotes.
So Ken writes in the footnote on the bottom of page 56, most of these dreams were undated, but their general chronology, I believe, can be ascertained. Some of them extend beyond her graduate years at New York University, but have been included here for the sake of preserving the continuity of the split self theme. Well, the split self theme is really not only at the heart of Absence from Felicity and Helen's story, but everyone's story. And it's at the heart of what's being healed by the curriculum of A Course in Miracles as we learn it and apply it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating to see the mind of Helen through these stories and these dreams and things. And I mean, I can relate. I get it.
Every man's story, every woman's story. Yeah.
Right. It's the
Yeah.
same. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd be insisting on bringing my own wardrobe if I saw Jesus in my dream, but I don't know, because I'm not Helen, and I'd have a different condition, I'm sure. So
And later on, Ken says in his prodigious and brilliant work, we learn metaphorically that from the Course that not only is there no emperor, not only is there no clothes, but there's no emperor.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No slack suits, no. It sounds to me like she's wearing something different in the dream. So here's the dream.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if it would stay like this all year round? I say to myself, slipping back my cape and baking happily in the hot sun. But of course it won't. In just a little while, it'll be winter and the snow and cold will come back and I'll freeze to death again. It'll stay like that for months and months and I'll get colder and colder. I've lived through a lot of winters, but somehow I have a feeling that I won't get through another one. I began to shiver in spite of the heat and pull my cape closely around my shoulders. Okay, so this is the gentleman. Perhaps you'd like to spend the winters underground with us this year, asked the gentleman. We are standing in an enormous underground cavern lit by hundreds of small crystal clusters of lights set in the high arched ceiling. The lights are so remote that they seem like stars, and the high dome suggests the open sky. This place is surely intended for a great many people, I say. Where is everybody? They haven't come as yet, the gentleman explains, but they will. There is no need for them to come here as long as it's still summer. And now tell me, he asks, returning to his first question, how would you like to spend the winter underground with us? I don't quite know, I say uneasily. I'd better think it over first.
I'm afraid I'll be dreadfully uncomfortable here. You needn't worry about that, says the gentleman reassuringly. You'll be quite safe here. It's not that I doubt your word, of course, I add hastily. The gentleman laughs pleasantly. It's quite evident that you do doubt my word, he says, but it's not likely that you could take anybody's word for anything. Faith isn't one of your strong points now, is it? How's the weather here? I asked next, feeling that this is a really important question for me. It's quite warm and very pleasant, says the gentleman. In fact, most people come here at first because of the climate. If they decide to stay, though, and most of them do, they usually do so for better reasons. Such as? I asked curiously. That's hard to explain, says the gentleman. It's quite different here, so different that it's hard to get used to at first. You see, the environment itself is perfect, but what you make of it is strictly your own affair. That in itself makes a great difference, but understanding the difference depends on your ability to perceive it, which of course nobody can do for you. Nobody can do for you. You may not be able to see any difference at all, which would be most unfortunate. I've been hoping you'll learn in time, but if not, you can always go away. Nobody will detain you. So far, it sounds fair enough to me. However, there are still some further questions to be settled. What does one wear down here? I ask, mentally reviewing my wardrobe. You don't have to be concerned with that, answers the gentleman. We take care of all such details for you. He leads me into one of the shops. In the open showcases are piles of curious-looking black slack suits. The slack suits don't particularly appeal to me. However, I examine them chiefly to be polite. How many would I need? I ask. Oh, you don't need more than one, says the gentleman. I don't like this at all. One would hardly be enough. I begin at once to figure out some way of getting more and decide that since the showcases are open, it would be easy to steal an extra suit or two without being discovered. As if I had spoken out loud, the gentleman answers still pleasantly and without criticism. I told you it was different here. It's quite impossible to steal anything. Ours is not an economy of scarcity. We have plenty of everything. You just take it if you want it. As for the suits, I didn't say you could have only one. I said you'd need only one. You can have as many as you want. Ours is not a money economy. There is nothing you can either steal or buy. We have an economy of great abundance because where there is scarcity, it is very difficult for people to realize that there is nothing worth stealing or buying. You'd better start off by taking as many of everything as you see fit. After a while, it will no longer occur to you to take more than you need. There just won't be any sense in doing it.
Especially when you have to pay to move it.
I know. Yeah, I'll bet. That's probably true.
I just scheduled the delivery of the 27-foot trailer that will pull up Wednesday afternoon here, and it's got 16 feet worth of our main stuff that will be delivered. So speaking of stuff, yeah, including a few clothes and a whole lot of other stuff. Yeah.
This is just so cool. This discussion of economy that she's having with Jesus in her dream is like so. I mean, it's like Joel Goldsmith kind of thing. It's like there's, and of course, miracles. This economy of scarcity versus this economy of abundance through our source. You know, it's just this is not something that came out of her thinking. I can't imagine that this was an experience that Helen read and studied economic treatises or thought about, what would be a perfect arrangement for society or culture or anything like that. She didn't even have Star Trek to watch to see, what a world is like when you don't have an economy of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
And of course, this would be real easy to turn into a level of confusion idea, since the abundance that really is being talked about has nothing to do with form. It's really all about the abundance of the innocence and the identity that is completely shared. So the loneliness, uncertainty, and fear that is described in the Course as being the signature attributes of the ego are impossible in the Holy Spirit's thought system,
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
it does all those. Yeah.
So I mean, it works on all levels, because in truth and reality, there is no scarcity, and the scarcity principle is
Mhm.
one of the major things that cause division amongst people and fear in the world. And if you just knew that no matter what happened, you were being taken care of, if you could understand that and be clear about that, then you would have no reason to fear about anything in the world anymore. Health, sickness, death, money, children.
Yeah. Each
Uh,
step gently planned by one who knows only your good,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that the next paragraph of that is, do you think he doesn't know the way to you? You think you have
We're
to
the ones
figure
that
it out? Yeah.
have a PhD in building barricades, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so Helen's having this economic discussion about suits and clothing and such. She says, and Jesus has just told her, what is it? He just told her, you better start off by taking as many of everything as you see fit. After a while, it will no longer occur to you to take more than you need. There just won't be any sense in doing it. This is Jesus, the gentleman, talking to her.
Mhm.
And Helen says, I'm inclined to doubt this, but refrain from saying so. She says, I have two very pretty blue slack suits at home. I say, do you think it would be wrong for me to bring them with me? Certainly not, the gentleman says. How can it be wrong if you think they'll make you happier? You won't wear them very long, though. Again, that whole generosity of heaven, that there's, you can't do anything wrong. It's
Mhm.
not, you can bring anything you want, you can take anything you want, nothing you do is wrong. So Helen says, I'm beginning to feel confused. Obviously, the gentleman was right. This place is very different, and I'm not too sure that I get along here very well. I've got by in my own world after a fashion, but this place might be something I couldn't cope with. Wow. And ego says, yep, I agree. I wouldn't be able to cope with not having control of everything.
Mhm.
So she says, if you don't care about appearances, and if people can't steal or buy anything, how do you manage to get along? I ask. I mean, how does one get to be noticed or liked? Noticed or liked. That's very simple, says the gentleman. If you're nice, people will notice you and like you. If not, why then they won't. It will take a long time for you to be either noticed or liked. You may, in fact, be very nearly invisible to the people here for quite a while, because what you emphasize, they won't even see. But still, since you can't stand another cold winter, you can't lose anything by taking a chance. If you like, you can regard it as an experiment. You can always go away. It's still summer, so you have plenty of time to think it over. The decision isn't final either way, so don't get a notion that it's a life and death affair. It really isn't. When the fall comes, see how you feel about it, and then do whatever you like. When the fall comes, that's so symbolic, right? So Helen continues, we shake hands. Thank you for the invitation, I say politely, and go out. So I say politely and go out. I haven't made up my mind about coming, but if I do, I'll insist on bringing my own slack suits. I don't believe in utopias. Oh my gosh. So Ken says again, the final lines reflect, as does the whole dream, the part of Helen's mind that resisted Jesus's offer to enter his world of abundance and peace, referred to in A Course in Miracles as the real world. To the end, Helen retained her right to choose to remain exactly where she was, even though she was clearly not happy.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yep, we're all fighting for our limitations, and sure enough, they're ours, as Richard Bach said in his book Illusions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've got time. It's not just a short 2-page dream. I could read the Helen and the pot. Or excuse me, the Helen. There's a Freudian slip.
The Helen and the pot.
The hen and the pot.
Okay.
Should I read that one?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
It's just so good. I love it.
Yeah. So the next dream is the hen in the pot, succinctly, if not acerbically, portrays Helen's conflict between a suicidal, death-attracted self and a self that strives for survival. The protagonists are a hungry Helen and a suicidal hen who keeps diving into the cooking pot. The dream closes with a statement of Helen's seemingly perennial situation. Neither of us moves. It is a stalemate, and there is no answer. And then here's Helen's account. I have just placed a large empty iron pot on the stove. Before I light the flame under it, a small tan hen who looks something like a female pheasant, alliteration for you, female pheasant flies in through the window and makes a beeline for the pot. She nestles down, tucks her wings in contentedly, and smiles sweetly at me. I am quite surprised at her sudden intrusion, but I do not want to hurt her. I take my hand from the gas handle and try to lift her gently from the pot. She is not heavy and can easily be picked up. However, she makes a desperate and successful effort to re-enter the pot every time she's removed. Finally, I try to reason with her. Why do you want to stay in that pot? I ask. There is not much sense in persisting and risking getting yourself burned up. It's not a matter of sense, the hen answers with some smugness. It's an instinct. I do it all the time. I couldn't possibly stop even if I wanted to. And I don't want to, as it happens. And Helen continues, I find this annoying. With some irritation, I say, you'll have to fly off now. I must fix lunch. And frankly, I don't think much of this whole thing. Look at it this way. There's no water or grease in the pot, and you wouldn't even make a tasty stew. You're all full of feathers, which would merely burn away. Even if you don't care what happens to you, the pot would be ruined. Now be a good bird, please, and go away. I'd really not want to hurt you. The hen shakes her head. Instinct is instinct, she replies. This is my way of life. I'm sorry it's interfering with yours, and I have nothing against you personally. However, since our interests obviously conflict at this point, it's only fair to tell you that I will probably win. That's funny. There is a moment of silence while I try to decide what to do next. This bird is obviously quite serious. I try to appeal to her sympathy. Look here, I say. I have really had it even before you flew in. Do you think that if I told you why I haven't managed to get a bite to eat for almost 2 days, you might take pity on me and go away? Frankly, I doubt it, replies the hen. I really don't care about you one way or the other, although I repeat that personal animosity is not involved. You want to eat, and apparently you need this pot for that purpose. I need this pot for my own suicidal tendencies. Unfortunately, the way things look now, neither of us is going to get what we want. You won't turn on the flame, and I won't go away. Wow, how symbolic is that, huh? Maybe we can work things out, I say, hoping to resolve this stalemate. Look here, I'll get another pot, and you can stay in this one. Will that do? Obviously not, says the hen indignantly. If you turn the fire on under another pot, I would have to fly into that one. You don't expect me to merely sit quietly in a cold pot, do you? That wouldn't accomplish anything. I'm now reduced to desperation. Please be reasonable, I beg the hen. I've had an awful lot of trouble in this kitchen. The refrigerator broke and we've got a new one, but that didn't work either. The gas main or something broke too, and there was a big mess with the stove. Nothing has been working right until the very minute you came in. I'm starving to death and you won't let me cook my lunch. I don't think that's fair. I'm willing to compromise, but I can't let you interfere with me forever. It's sweet of you to think I'm giving you a choice, says the hen. But you really don't understand the situation. I have to do this. It's my life work. It's inappropriate of you to even think of eating at a time like this. I look silently at the hen for a minute or two and suddenly jump back, startled by the brief gleam of unmistakable hatred in her round black eyes. Her equanimity returns quickly, and she smiles. Neither of us moves. It is a stalemate, and there is no answer. The stalemate, of course, is between the two parts of Helen's split mind, the one choosing to live, the other choosing to die. a conflict which is at this point in her life shows no indications of being resolved. The next dream presents a similar picture. And that's a bit longer dream, but like 2.5 pages. So maybe we save that one for next time. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But
so yeah, what do you make of this?
well, the stalemate, of course, is everyone's, like, once again, everyone's situation. We all have that shared interest of looking at the stalemate that the ego mind seems to present us with, that conflicted situation at every turn. That the ego is bent on suicide. Holy Spirit is patiently waiting for us to choose without coercion the thought system of innocence and guiltlessness that doesn't demand sacrifice and doesn't demand suicide or murder as it's projected out into the world. So we just have to see for ourselves over time that there's really no sanity whatsoever, or no point in the ego's insane alternative, when the real alternative is just waiting for us all the time.
Yeah,
Patiently, like the Maytag repairman, just waiting for that phone to ring, right?
it just is so funny. I mean, what a strange dream to have, and just the whole conflict about, I mean, there's a conflict about food, because Helen, as we've seen, was really conflicted about food, and was
Mm-hmm.
the skinniest fat person he had ever met. Um,
Yeah.
and then here are the reasons why, and I have to apologize to folks for not moving the page when she was explaining the reasons why, but someone called me on the phone, and I was like, what, why are you calling me? Anyway, but yeah, this whole idea of I mean, she was telling the bird, here's all bad things that are going to happen to you if you stay in that pot. And the whole decision of, not turning the heat on, not turning the gas on, but then the whole
Mm-hmm.
story about the gas, everything was broken and we had so many problems. It just, it really does very clearly point out a lot of things in her mind she probably had no idea about when she had the dream.
Yep. Yeah, and again, it's everyone's ambivalence that we're all working through, and that's why we can afford to be truly compassionate, and that leads us to have more and more experiences like the subway experience that she had, where we realized, gosh, we really are all in the same boat, and there's no need to be critical or of ourselves or anyone else in truth, because nothing happened, and we're all equally unaffected by our dreams.
Yeah, exactly. We're all equally unaffected by our dreams. Thank you so much, Bruce, for hosting.
Likewise, Lynn Johnson, and it's always a delight to talk with you on Saturday mornings, and look forward to the next conversation.
All right, and look for us on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can go there and watch and listen to many of our shows, which
Yep.
I call them shows. They're not really programs, but
And I have quite a few archive shows from actually before we read Gary's fourth book, and the most recent one prior to this one, their journey home, on acimblog.com. If anybody in the room or on the chat is interested in checking some of those out, and just look
Yep,
for just look for your name, and you'll see a whole bunch of those audio files archived there.
awesome,
With more to follow when we get to it, huh?
Exactly. So thank you so much, Bruce Rawles. Yeah, we have a whole book we need to put on there.
Exactly.
All right, my buddy. We will see you next week, and have fun unloading that truck.
Oh, I will.
Are you sleeping on an air mattress on the floor?
No, we've got some mattresses.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. All right.